You know, that's one of my favorite songs that the two of you do together. There's just something beautiful about the idea of a road leading home, and the idea that all you have to do is kind of look over your shoulder, and there's that love and support you thought you were hunting down out in the road in front of you. It's right there with you. It's right there with you all the time. So I've seen wonderful examples of that this week. And that includes, we had our Blue Christmas service this past week. And it was really beautiful. It was one of our, for some reason, more powerful ones. I saw a lot of people showing up just to support other people. And part of that group was our circle of licensed professional practitioners showed up and took a few hours out of their evening to simply be there in case somebody showed up who their heart was ripped open by the ceremony of it all, so that we could be there as a healing presence. I consider myself first and foremost a practitioner. As a matter of fact, in this denomination, you cannot be a minister unless you are first a practitioner. The practitioner is the one who sits with you and is an open space, a loving, accepting, healing space, as you go through looking in the mirror and finding out all that is true about you. Now, for some of us, when we go into that silence and we go into that space, we're really afraid of what we're going to find, yeah? We're going to find out that we really are that selfish. We're going to find out that we really have stepped on that many toes. But you know what else we're going to find? We're going to find that the divine is within us, that there is a place within us that never forgot our oneness with God. And I know that to be a deep and true principle because you find it in most of the philosophies that have ever existed around the world. That's how I know it's a deep truth, the capital T truth, is that people discover it over and over and over again. And so you will find it in many, many different cultures and faith traditions. And I had the pleasure of discovering yet another way to celebrate that deep truth within ourselves. In a holiday that exists within the Buddhist tradition called Rohatsu. Has anyone ever celebrated that one? Okay, it's you and me, girl. Rohatsu, as I understand it, just means December 8th. So I guess you can never forget that particular anniversary. This celebrates the day that the Buddha found enlightenment, that he sat for 7 weeks under the Bodhi tree. And in that last week, he went into what's called a deep Samadhi. And that was a deep, deep contemplation, a deep knowing. And on the 7th day of the 7th week, as I read it, under the light of the morning star, he achieved enlightenment. He came to a deep knowing of who he was and what he was and who we all are. Now, he sat under the Bodhi tree. I don't know if you could see it, but our Buddha sits under a Christmassy tree. We do things a little differently here. What I would suggest to you is that when this man went within and listened to his own heart, the reason he became what we know as the Buddha is because he really did go all the way in. He went all the way as deep as any human being can go to find the divine. It's what Jesus promised us. It's what Krishna promises us. It's what Moses promised us. It's what everybody, all the saints and sages of all the religion promise us. So what is there to find when we go within? I would suggest to you, it's kind of, you're going to have to imagine our teaching symbol. It currently looks very much like a wreath. So for those of you who don't know, our teaching symbol is a big circle, and it's divided into 3 levels. And as we're down here at the physical level, it doesn't mean it's less than, it just means it's a bit more grounded, pun intended. As we're down here, as we look within, we're going to find all of our human circumstances, whether we're black or white, whether we're male, female, or some non-binary idea, whether or not we like chilies or don't. All of that stuff lives at the bottom level. And all of our belief systems live in the middle level. And so as we go within, first we see our physical life, and then we go a little deeper, we start hearing our own thoughts. We start hearing the thoughts that we've been carrying, perhaps unknowingly, through our lives. It's those thoughts, often those belief systems, that people find painful and avoid like the plague, which is why so many of us have had trouble actually sitting down to meditate, yes? Does anyone else sit down to meditate and start going, la, 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 oh, I have to get something for the nephew, and what am I going to do for the middle one? And, it's Christmas, and God, I need to do the numbers again because I'm not sure I budgeted for, and, ooh, turkey. Usually it's, ooh, chicken. But, look, a squirrel. We just got to go through the whole animal kingdom here. Or maybe there's that moment of, man, the minute I get quiet, I start thinking about what I said to so-and-so, that they took to mean X, Y, and Z, and what I meant was somewhere way over here, but I know I hurt their feelings, and I don't know how I'm going to make it up to them, and oh my God. Or maybe you just start mentally spending the tithe from your lottery winnings. That's my favorite game. When we go within, our little what's called a monkey mind, hops all over the place and keeps us out of going any further. Why? Because there's so much in there. There are so many beliefs that we just didn't even know we were holding. And if we listen to what we're saying in our own mind, we start hearing those beliefs. We start hearing those beliefs, and many of us, especially the people in this room, because this is just how we roll, we start questioning them. We become a little bit deliciously rebellious. And we start saying, well, wait a minute, I was taught that a lady should not ask for what she wants, but make sure she's serving everybody else and put her own needs last and never take time for herself and never, just be available all the time. Yeah, I question that one a lot. There's an old belief system that says that we are separate from God. In our Judeo-Christian culture that is so hugely and unknowingly influenced by the Greek traditions, we believe that there is us and then there is God. And yet there's that top third of our circle where we have our circumstances, our belief systems, and then there's the ultimate T truth. The capital T truth. The ultimate truth that is the pure love and power and peace. That's actually our divine heritage. We exist within that. Always have, always will. There's nowhere else to go. If God is infinite, then where else you got to go? There's no other club to belong to. And Ernest Holmes has a great quotation where he says, man's self-knowing, what the heck does that say? Oh, there we go. Man's self-knowing mind is his unity with the whole, his perception of reality. What that means is that the mind you've been thinking with, the mind that reminded you to put cream in your coffee this morning or helped you drive a car in order to get here today, that mind is actually the one mind working through you as an individualized expression of the divine. Doesn't that sound like a whole bunch of jargon? She said, what? Think of it this way. the infinite mind contemplated itself and decided in order to contemplate itself, it needed a subject and an object of the sentence. It needed something to contemplate. If there's only really one, it can't contemplate anything because there's only itself to contemplate. We are the mirror in which God sees itself. We are individual. I like to think of us as experiments. We are God playing dress up. And like little kids, sometimes we forget who we really are because we're so into the characters we built in this less pretend world. You ever watched kids play dress up? And they are absolutely sure because they're wearing mommy's high heels or daddy's tie, probably both at the same time these days, that they are the power CEO and all of this other stuff. They're going to go out and make money and do all sorts of stuff. We forget we're just little kids playing pretend, and that little child within each and every one of us is the divine mind, is what could be called a Zen mind. And so Holmes goes on to say, the unity with God on the conscious side of life is the guarantee that man is a center of God consciousness, that he is some part of the consciousness of God. There's nothing else to discover. There's nothing else. And it is my firm belief, and I would suggest to you, that people like the Buddha, people like Jesus, would not have taken form and taught so much if they did not believe that we could do what they were teaching. When Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is within you, he didn't mean just the ghetto part. When Jesus said, neither here nor there, but the kingdom of heaven is not on the mountains, not down the street at Walmart. I don't think he said it that way, but you know what I mean. When the Buddha said, when he gave us the middle path, when he taught us how to walk that path, he didn't think that we couldn't do it. We don't, great teachers don't give us maps to places we're never going to be able to go. What would be the point of the map? There's more to the Buddha's story. What we talk about is that 7-week period of an 80-year life, as if that's the only thing he did. We make that mistake with Jesus, too. We act as if the crucifixion was the point of his life. No, it was the teaching beforehand and the resurrection afterwards. Those 3 hours he was on the cross, according to the mythology, are the least important things Jesus ever did. And dying was the biggest hoax, because we can't die. We can leave our physical bodies, but we cannot die. And so, the Buddha himself, Gautama Buddha, is said to have lived in extreme and exquisite 1%er lifestyle. His family was the ruling family in his area. He was meant to be a conqueror. His parents absolutely raised him to be a great warrior. And it wasn't until the age of 29 that he finally left the palace. By the age of 29, I had made a whole bunch of really interesting mistakes called growing up. What were you doing at age 29? Please don't tell me. I don't want to have to be a witness. But by age 29, a lot of our habits are established. A lot of who we think we are has been established. And so when the man who would become Buddha went out on the road, he spent 6 years trying to dissolve all of that belief system that he had about himself, who he thought he was. He worked with the ascetics. And, part of me says that he worked with them first because having spent 29 years in a palace, he didn't know how to cook. And so he had to go with the people who were fasting all the time because they didn't have top ramen back then. So he spent time, doing the whole sleep for 4 hours a night. I could never do that part. Not eating, but just being really hard on his physical self. And then he went and he studied with other people, and he studied with all these different masters. And we do that too. Debbie Ford, who is one of our great teachers on shadow work, talks about the year that she spent $50,000 on all of these different books and teachers and the 3-day weekends that we all go to. Has anyone, I'm not saying that we spent $50,000, but has anyone else done that? Bought every single book in the self-help section as if that's going to fix anything? You have to read it and actually do what it says. But no, I just keep buying the used books. That's another talk. He went out and he really dug deep. But he could not find that which he was looking for. He could not find that divine being that all of us are searching for, that all of us want to know love us. So when he sat down, I don't know if it was exactly, 49 days. There are some stories that say it was December 8th. Other people say it was in May, which actually is interesting because they say the same thing about the birth of Jesus. I don't care. The numbers are symbolic. 7 is the number of fulfillment in most scriptures. So 7 times 7 is the ultimate fulfillment. But as he sat there, he is said to have been bitten several times by poisonous snakes. In some teaching traditions, a snake is wisdom. And so wisdom sunk its teeth into him. It might also be that painful kind of wisdom that says, wow, I really like to phone it in and just, skate on without putting in the actual work that I know this job requires. I really love to make it mom and dad's fault that I, at 50, am still dealing with. No one but besides me is doing that, right? One of the things the Buddha taught us because of his own experience. So remember, he left at age 29. At 35, he would have achieved enlightenment. And then he had till age 80 to teach us all this stuff. And so, can you imagine what it would be like to spend 6 years, basically 49 days really getting to the meat and the heart of the matter, and then the rest of his life trying to share it? He tells us, don't seek the truth, seek your own prejudices. Don't seek the truth. Seek your own prejudices. Or as A Course in Miracles would tell you, something to the effect of, it's not ours to seek love, but to remove the obstacles to love. So what prejudices are you holding? Most people I have met are holding the prejudice that humans are somehow sinful and broken, that we are somehow separate from the divine, that somewhere way back in history, whether you call it Eve's mistake and it had something to do with an apple, or just the fall of the angels to become whatever, there is a story in the shared consciousness that something is terribly wrong, and it must be that we are wrong. This is where shame comes from. That's a prejudice. That's the prejudice that Buddha is saying, take a look at that. He's not saying you have to give it up if you're enjoying it. Get down with your bad self. Do your thing. But if it's possible that you look at your children and grandchildren and think there is no way that is a miserable sinner. Might be miserable for a moment before you feed it. There is no way that innocent child came into this world broken. That child seems to be giggling at the angels that are flying around it. Seems to still know itself to be absolutely loved. And if it's not true of the babies, then it can't be true of the adults. Yeah, we got a couple nicks and scars along the way. We had some really interesting and painful mistakes maybe. But if it is true of one of us, it must be true of all of us, that we are one with the divine. If you believed it to be true about Jesus at any point in your life, about Buddha at any point in your life, then logically speaking, as we dive into the way we think, we must admit that if it's possible for one, it's possible for all. If Buddha could reach enlightenment, so can we. As a matter of fact, that is exactly what all the great sages have said over time. All the mystics have taught the same thing. So what do you think are some other biases that we might have? One of the ones I hear about a lot is that if my life is off track somehow, if I'm unhappy, if I don't have the body or the partner or the bank account that I think I'm supposed to have in order to be successful, it must be my fault. And there's something wrong with me. What if there's nothing wrong with you? What if you're just running an experiment that this part isn't much fun? I've also heard well, Reverend Kathleen, I don't understand. You're a minister, but you have a cold. How does that work? Or I have my own heroes that I think, I call them bomb-proof. I have some coworkers who, they taught in 3rd and 4th grade before they became ministers, so nothing really upsets them. They're bomb-proof. But you know what? The truth of even them, even my heroes, is that they get rattled sometimes. They get hard on themselves at times. They fall out of love with the divine within them. They forget. Here's another bias that Dr. Ken Gordon pointed out while he was here at the beginning of last month. Oh my God, at the end of 2 months ago. He says, we have a belief that it has to be hard. Whatever this work is, bless you, whatever this is, it has to be hard. That somehow we have to go sit on top of an ice cube on the top of a mountain in our underwear and do that without eating for 7 days. And somehow maybe then we will have earned divine intervention. You know what? If that's what we have to do to earn grace, then it ain't grace. If that's what you have to do to earn love, that's not love. That's a prejudice speaking. I'm here to tell you right now, here today, you are already enlightened. You've been pretending to be this human who's flailing about. But you have been to the mountaintop. It's time to remember that. And as we celebrate this season of light, we sit there with the Buddha under the tree. I bet you the Bodhi tree didn't have pretty lights. At least not that anyone else could see. I'd suggest to you right now that you let go of your prejudice that says you are somehow not worthy of the infinite love of God. Breathe that in for a moment. That is the bias I would like you to let go of as your Rohatsu gift this year. Believing that you are somehow unworthy is a lie. It's a mistaken belief. You are already the enlightened one. You already have Buddha nature. And it's simply a matter of doing what the Buddha did. He was asked, "Are you a god?" And he said, "No." Believe it or not, the Buddhists don't believe in God. He was asked, "Are you a great prophet?" And he said, "No." And so they asked him, "What are you?" And he said, "I am awake." I ask you to be awake to the celebration of what is already in yourself. Be awake to the immense love that is the truth of your being. Once you get through the undergrowth of all the fear and all of the suspicion and unworthy feelings, be awake to the truth of who you are. Live in that top third of the teaching symbol, because that's who you really are. And so we're going to come together, even now, to wake up together. And we do this through prayer. In the Muslim tradition, the first call to prayer says, prayer is better than sleep. I would make a very bad Muslim. But in this moment, I'm going to ask you to join with me in consciousness and remember that we are in the one mind, the same one mind that was in the Christ and in the Buddha. Every Christ and every Buddha is awake and alive within each one of us now. So if you need to close your eyes to focus on that inner truth, I invite you to do it now. It is this inner light that tells the truth. It is this inner light that is what some people call God. Some people call enlightenment. Some call Atman. Some of us just call home and the road that leads to it. This being, this presence that goes above and beyond that which can be described in words and must be experienced. It is that beingness that is here as each and every one of us right now. It is the divine life that is living us. It is the one mind that is thinking through us. And it is well pleased with its creation. And so as we awaken to the absolute truth of our being, that we are one in God, I celebrate how many biases and prejudices simply fall away as we recognize their fallacy. How beautiful and peaceful and sweet it is to have gone all the way up the mountain only to find ourselves. Everything we have judged in the past because we misunderstood it. Everything we wanted to be and now find that we already are. This is the sweetness that is found within this quiet silence that is within each and every one of us. This is the truth of our being. And as our biases and prejudices simply melt away, we stand here and now. I stand with all of us here and now, seeing the light of truth, allowing that to enlighten me and become of service to all sentient beings everywhere. It is natural to sit in awe of and be grateful for this infinite truth that lives within each one of us. And so all I can do is bless it and call it good and let it be. And so it is.